Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, Chelsea Lighting, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova Burns and Gian Tomasi, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Corman Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, the Wickoff Group, Urban American, and Ackman Ziff Real Estate, Ariel Property Advisors, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Goldman Properties, Moynihan Group, Muss Development, RAL Development Services, the Spandrel Group, LLC, Rosewood Realty Group, Triangle Equities.
So it's like happy days are here again. You know, the office market, it's improved. I mean, 3 years ago, if I did an office show, they would start saying, oh, are you going to the Wake or the Shiva? Okay, but today, the office market has really improved in New York. But I really needed people to tell me what's really happening. Has it improved? Is it getting a little worse? So I brought together the 4 gurus, the guys who understand what's happening in the office market. My guests today include David Falk, who is the president of the Tri-State Region for Newmark Knight Frank, Richard Bernstein, who is the executive vice chairman at Cassidy Turley, Paul Myers, who's the executive vice president at C.B. Richard Ellis, and last but not least, Franklin Spire, who is the vice chairman at Cushman and Wakefield. So, I should also say a fellow Wolverine person, and the Jets, but
don't say it.
Oh, I won't say it at all. But okay, Mr. Falk, you've been on a number. How do you see the beginning of 2012 in the New York City office market? The apples are over there. Is it shiny? Is it optimistic?
You know, it's interesting. We're involved in a lot of transactions where the reason why the deal takes so long, the landlord and the tenant are not sure if it's a landlord market or a tenant market. And if you think about that,
that's why I have Mr. Myers over here.
You know, you have landlords. You go in certain parts of the city, it's a landlord market, and they read the newspaper. And there's certain parts of the city where the tenants have control because there's a lot of space. And so we sit across the table and we scratch our head and say, why is this so difficult to get this deal accomplished? Because everyone has, different expectations of the transaction.
How was 2011? Was it as good as some of the people in the press are stating? I mean, did you think it was a great year, Richard?
I think it was very strong. There was a lot of velocity, a lot of confidence locally. People in New York, whether it's right or wrong, felt that this market was, driven by its own demand and the local economics. And there's a lot of confidence on the street despite all we read in the newspapers. And I think that's propelling our market.
Now, here's a question, Franklin. We had a lot of large leases signed last year, and New York City is fueled by the financial service industry, the legal industry. Those leases, there are discussions of layoffs. There are discussions, Morgan Stanley's going to lay off. The bonuses aren't going to be there. What Do we have those big 600,000 square foot leases? Do we have those big leases to go in there? And the other question, Paul, and all of you, because I'd like you all to chime in, do we have the spaces?
Well, I think there's still plenty of space around. I think there are many issues facing our city economy and our world economy, including some financial service layoffs. And I think transactions that are focused on an 015 or 016 delivery date are going to be delayed slightly while people figure out where the world is going. New York has its influence and as a center of commerce going for it. But at the same time, I think there are influences outside of New York that will affect how the leaders of our financial services firms act and the time within which they act. And depending on how our election goes, or how the economy and the euro works out in Europe, and what happens with Iran, all those I think are being measured now by leaders in business and will, I think, slow the pace a little bit of these major deals.
First off, true confessions to you two. I'm a Buckeye fan, so it's on the table.
Okay,
You'll forgive me.
okay.
Okay, can I stay?
You can stay, no
Okay.
problem.
So you can take my answer with a grain of salt. I think there is a lot of space out there, but a lot of it is commodity, not great space. It's leftover space. It's space that's tough to lease. And going forward to 2015, I think there's a real need for new development.
But when you talk about commodity space, and this is interesting, because a number of years ago, I think I had one of, I think your partner, Barry Gosselin, on the show, and I was saying, there are those small accounting firms, there are the small nonprofits, there are those companies who don't need that quality space. They deserve to be in lower prices because they financially cannot afford a $40 a square foot. They can afford the $22 a square foot.
But to David's point, the landlords are kind of pricing spaces, homogeneously, right? And if you have a commodity space, you have to price as commodity space. And so that accounting firm who wants a price deal is looking at a space that's commodity space that is priced with the rest of the building and the rest of the portfolio. And it really, pricing has to be very highly segmented right now based upon what you have.
But at the end of the day, a lot of those mid-sized firms that we're talking about who are looking at commodity space, they might just renew because they're preserving capital.
Right.
And that's the battle the landlords have, is that how do you get someone who's not a gigantic tenant, it's a 20,000 of a tenant, they're facing building out at $150 a foot, total cost, they can stay where they are. And that seems to be the smarter, more prudent decision when you don't want to take capital and put it towards real estate.
But a lot of what drove volume in late 09 and 10 and even into early 11 was landlords were building space for tenants, and that has gone away. I think in order to get volume back up again, landlords are going to need to.
So are we saying that the tenant improvement money has been reduced at the end of 2011?
I think concessions have come down.
Concession?
I don't think so. I think a year ago I saw it coming down, and then last summer, market quieted, and some landlords said, "We'll build it for you." And
But some, it wasn't across.
it's not across the board, but it's still out there. I thought that was going to be eliminated, and it's not.
I think David is right on the trend that more people are considering staying and avoiding the capital exposure of a move. Landlords have to reach to get someone to move. Tenants want to avoid the risk, and that trend, I think, is really picking up steam over the last 3-4 months. I think you can see a lot more people renewing. Landlords recognize that they will have a more likely have a renewal, and therefore they're able to somewhat bump up the rents on renewals. But for a relocation, you're going to have to chip in TI dollars.
Richard?
I think going back to 08, one part of the market that has remained quiet or less active than others is that the mid portion of the market. And if you have to really examine why, I think you have a lot of these medium-sized firms that are fighting for market share. Capital is hard to get. And even if operationally they would like to be in a different place and culturally they want to transition their firm, they're the last to move. The small guys are doing fine, and they found a lot of opportunities, and they did what they had to do. And the bigger firms are reinventing themselves, and that's why I think they're leaving the commodity space. They have to find the right floor plate. They're going to change the culture by densifying the population, reduce the seat count on a per square foot basis, And so the market has been driven, I think, by the small and the large tenants.
Absolutely.
And the middle-sized tenants.
So, you know, we were
less active.
talking prior to the show about what new space is coming on the market or in various developments. We still have 11 Times Square, nice building, great location, you know, for people who want to be right in the heart of Times Square. You have Minskoff Building at 51 Astor Place. You have Boston Properties on their 8th Avenue property. You also still have some space available at 510 Madison Avenue. You have the Trade Center, I mean, which is happening. There's no question. And then you have the two far west sides. You have the Brookfield site, and then you have the related site.
How about Franklin site?
Okay, no question about that. But that's no.
got
But
right.
no, you have Franklin site, which is a great location in Midtown, which is on really 46 and 47th Street between 5th and 6th, which is really the heart of the situation that gives you opportunities. Now, who's gonna lease? Who's gonna go into the space that you're working on right now, which is a brand new building, beautiful property over there? Who's looking? If some of the financial service tenants that we're talking about and other people have really got their space out there, who's going to be going there? What kind of rents are they going to see, and what kind of concessions and so on?
Well, on the Extell site, which is known as 55 West 46th, the building was designed with the latest efficiencies in mind. It's a center core. It's designed with floor-to-ceiling glass on the curtain wall, so there's more light coming into the space. And the likely users are people who want branding, people who want to be central in Midtown, and people who want an identity that will be very effective for them.
Here's a question. 46th Street, 47th Street, because it's both sides over there, you know, at one time was the jewelry center, or we could call Little Brazil, because the restaurant's on 46th Street. When a hedge fund wants branding, the hedge fund says, I want to be in the Plaza District. I want to go to 712. Maybe I'll deal with Sheldon if I'm crazy enough. I want to go to 9 West, or I'll go to Paramount or something like that. Do you think the branding, do you think the hedge funds are going to go to places like 51 Astor, to the Extell site for the branding?
Well, there's two different types of hedge funds. The hedge fund guy who lives on Bond Street, who wants to be a little cutting edge and doesn't want to go to 510 Madison, as an example, or Extell. For the same money, he goes, you know what, I want to be different. It defines our company. We're cutting edge. We're going to be progressive. I'm going to 51 Astor. What we're seeing is today that a lot of these hedge funds and private equity firms, they don't want to pay top rent. They want to be in a great building, but don't want to pay $100 a foot because they feel that it's just not appropriate. So they may go to some of these better buildings and be at a Park Avenue building, but pay in the base of the building and be there rather than the top ego space and pay triple digits. So a little more, a little more focused on economics yet quality, the balance.
But that relates, and whoever can answer the question, can we get, and I don't want to say Park Avenue commoditized space, is there Park Avenue space at the $80
Yes.
a square foot availability? I mean, there's still 240, the old Hemsley days.
230.
230 Park Avenue, 245 Park Avenue. There are those buildings, which are B buildings. They're not A buildings over there. I mean, 280, they want close to $100 a foot, I understand. Are there Park Avenue buildings that a hedge fund could go into? Because people still like the fact that it's Park Avenue.
Well, you'll have the top of 399 Park available in a hedge fund that's clearly a hedge fund type building. So I think Franklin will be competing with tenants who are going to look at those similar floor plates.
Now, but what's the rent for a top of 399 Park Avenue?
I believe they're asking is $115 a foot.
Mm-hmm.
So, this market, it's a much wider range between ask and take because they're trying to get a number that isn't exactly an everyday number. So they may take in the 90s. They get to see what the market, accepts.
That's clearly not a commodity space. When you look at Park Avenue, high floors, great floor plates, there's not a lot of that out there.
But we were talking before the show about 3rd Avenue. Look at 3rd Avenue. I mean, I have an office on 3rd Avenue. Great views of the water, we're up there. I mean, I don't think they'll get more than $40 a square foot, $40, $45 a square foot on Park Avenue, We have Dos Caminos in the building, but you know, and even the Second Avenue space. I mean, people don't run there. Why not?
Interesting. The masters of the universe have not yet migrated that far east. There's still a sense of Park Avenue is the place, or even Union Square, or even 6th Avenue.
So here's the question. As you say, the masters of the universe have migrated there. How do the masters of the universe migrate to 8th Avenue?
You know, the set of buyer values have changed over time. It's a very interesting thing, which probably should be looked at relative to other real estate cycles. I mean, to answer that question, if you go back to what you just said a moment ago, 3rd Avenue, if you track the tenant base, most of those tenants tend to stay on 3rd Avenue. Well, look what's happened over time. Some of the organizations are looking for different type of space, and it can't be accommodated by the product on 3rd Avenue. So hence, you get tenants moving off 3rd Avenue if they're looking for a different type product and their culture is becoming.
But if you're an accounting firm, you're on 3rd Avenue.
That's
because
fine.
That's who,
Fine.
it's fine.
Fine.
It's perfect for their space.
It's
you
still
know,
good for a lot of firms.
it's perfect. It's perfect for a law firm too.
It's fine.
But there are lots of organizations that compete for clients and want to give their clients the impression that they are in the best part of town.
Right.
And when their clients come visit, the clients don't want to visit 3rd Avenue and 46th Street. They want to visit.
So now
Park
I'm going to
Avenue.
relate. How many clients are going to say, "I want"? Do I wake up in the morning? It's like I used to do about shows on Long Island City. Long Island City, who wanted to go there? I mean, it's not the situation. We're not talking about it. But how many people really wake up and say, "I want to go to 34th Street and 10th Avenue"? You know, how easy is it going to be? You know, the Time Warner Center is a different case. It was Columbus Circle, even though there wasn't much. It was one tenant and the rest of the space over there. How is the Far West Side going to do?
I think what's going to happen once you get out of Midtown, and we're seeing with our clients, the city lacks large, exciting space for companies in the media, communications, technology industries. Areas, if you walk up and down 10th Avenue in the 30s, it's incredible. You will see tourists walking around, looking at the High Line and looking at the residential development. This area was barren 10 years ago. Commercial tenants that we're working with aren't as concerned about location once you get out of Midtown. It's more about the look and feel and image of the space. Does it speak to their company, their brand? And I think 34th and 10th, or you want to go downtown to Hudson Square, or you want to go to 27th Street, it's acceptable.
And I think it's also building quality. Tenants are looking for a certain infrastructure, a certain floor plate, the efficiency Franklin talked about. And really, Hudson Square, when the 7 is done, it'll be no different getting from Grand Central to Hudson Square than it is going from Grand Central to 59th Street or Grand Central to 11 Madison.
I mean, look, I go down to Hudson Square periodically because that's where the 1010 Winds is located. I mean, these were all printing buildings.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, Pret just opened up. You have Jacques over there. You have other things, situation over there. You have hotels. Hudson Square has changed. I mean, this is not the old Varick Street.
That's right.
You have street life, you have traffic, you have 24-hour circulation.
Franklin, you're putting it exactly right. You have 24-hour situation over there. And that's the market. Who's going to move down to Larry's space and the other space at the Trade Center? Richard, any ideas?
I think, when the financial markets, we're in a lull right now, but once we get past the election, and if the trend continues, I think we'll get a new surge, and you'll see the next round of large-scale financial tenants understanding that when they do the analysis with new product, even though there's a significant delta to product that they're in, they see the operating efficiencies and the cost benefits of going to a building like Larry's building, then I think the analysis doesn't have quite that hurdle.
We were talking about efficiency of space, and I use the story about 11 Times Square, Proskauer moving from 1585. They took the same amount of space, but there's no more. People, even when you move to 1290, from 1290 to 1290, the amount of space, the amount of secretarial space, there's no more data centers, there's conference rooms are smaller, administrative. Companies are becoming more efficient, aren't
You're
they?
fitting more people in less space. So even if even Proskauer in their move, I'm sure they took the same amount of space.
They took the
but
same.
they have more lawyers in that space, and that's what it's all about.
It's actually very common today to see a tenant who is either consolidating or relocating into less space. It's really unusual to find someone taking more space.
I mean, I remember when I was doing consulting for Deloitte in 2000. I mean, I didn't have an office. I mean, somebody was nice enough. They gave me a little hoteling location because I was always at the same thing. Accounting firms have gone to the hoteling concept, you know, and
When we moved, when Cushman Wakefield moved in '09, we took substantially less space than we had in Midtown. We had 250,000 feet in Midtown. We're now in, including storage space, 175,000 feet. That includes the increased loss factor that we faced when we moved into new space. So the efficiencies were by really, as you said, densifying the space. A lot of space is being used that wasn't used before. The drywall idea of people having their own kingdoms and being able to close their office doors changed. Everything is glass and shared and open. But mainly the sense that as a organization, we all want to see something go to the bottom line and spend as efficiently as possible, where we all benefit as an organization.
But I think we
willing to do it.
we did the same thing. We have more people in less space, but the space feels better because of the glass. It feels like you have a better work environment. I think, you talk to the younger folks who are in the cubicles, they're so much happier now.
Right.
We just went through a very interesting exercise for Random House. So they occupy all of 675,000 feet. And it used to be that when you talked about densifying and watching the bottom line, it was a sentence and you had to worry about how you would deal with the cultural resistance that you would get to it. But today, corporations prefer it. So Random House restacked its occupancy. There were no layoffs. They still have the 1,500 employees in New York, and their business is quite strong right now. But between the pockets of vacancy that existed and the density that we achieved and the culture that now prefers the environment that we've created, they've been able to put 200,000 feet on the market, which became excess space. So whatever rent we get for them goes right to the bottom line, and they prefer their environment post-construction.
Younger people don't need a place to work. They need a wireless connection somewhere, and they prefer to work in different places, in different venues, and they prefer to move around. So they don't need that hard-walled office anymore. That's not their vision.
we were talking before about LinkedIn, Facebook, companies over here, and we were talking about Midtown South. I mean, Midtown South was never the preferred neighborhood. Look at the vacancy factor in Midtown South.
It's the tightest market in the country right now. I think the vacancy rate's like 5.9%, and a lot of that 5.9% is space that's going to be very difficult to lease. So in reality, if you have a tenant looking in Midtown South right now, there's not a lot of things to look at.
And in Midtown South, there's 10 buildings that have floor plates larger than 50,000 feet. Pretty much all of them you can't acquire space in.
What about the side streets in Midtown South? The buildings on West 19th Street, West 20th, how are they doing?
They're doing better than ever. They're piggybacking the rents. The avenue rents are at their all-time highs. If you say Lower Fifth is now $50 to $60 a foot, if you have a building on 19th that you spent a little money improving the lobby, you could get potentially a $40 rent. That never existed. There was a $25 buildings 8 years, 10 years ago.
That's right.
There's a whole market there for the side street buildings. On Park Avenue South, on the east side or on the west side, you could find nonprofits who can't pay the avenue rents, who want to be in Manhattan because that's where their money, that's where their fundraising is, and they're filling in those
So
pockets
what is
more than
Park Avenue South renting for today? Off the side streets, not Park Avenue South.
We have a deal on 21st Street right now between, I guess right off the Park. It's $43 a foot. Right.
Plus cleaning.
Plus cleaning, plus percentage increases instead of operating. It's it's all-time highs.
It looks more like a $47 or $48
But
rent.
going back to Third Avenue, all these companies could actually go to Third Avenue and save money, and they won't because it's not their image and culture.
And they could all go downtown.
They
and
want to
save
wear
money.
jeans and T-shirts and not wearing suit and ties with the accountants.
What about
and go to the cool restaurants and
Right.
live around the corner, all of which you can do now.
the meatpacking district? I mean, Chelsea Market. I mean, if there's the plans to build additional space, I mean, if the space was available today, you probably could lease Chelsea Market, right?
Well, if space was, matter of fact, we put in the market yesterday a sublease for 50,000 feet. You guys probably saw that. We had over 25 inquiries yesterday, and there's tours throughout the week because there's pent-up demand. 111 8th, 85 10th, Chelsea Market, 450 West 15th. Those are your four gorillas over there. There's less than 1% availability in total.
111 8th, Google's not going to lease to anyone else, right?
There's going to be no space available
That's
there.
right. So any space in that building is going to be taken up by Google.
So you think about David's stats there, that's 5 million square feet, give or take, in those buildings with a less than 1%. I think it's less
It's
than
even less than
It's
1%.
like a less than 0.5%.
I agree with you.
availability rate there.
Here's a question. And
Unbelievable.
it relates a little bit to the building that you're working. Gary's other side of the building, the Jewel Tower, is condominiums. There was in the 2000s, we've had periods in the 1990s and different times, like 633 3rd Avenue was converted, then you have all of, Francis Greenberg's side street buildings. Do you see companies, smaller companies, or even any of them, especially because of the potential accounting tax situation, looking to buy their space today?
Well, the building, we're not agent for that part of the building, but the building has had a lot of activity for the available condominiums.
Right, but I'm talking about, forget the jewelry
Right.
business, because that's a specific type of condominium. They have the safe over there. They have the other products. What about the space, the condominiumizing of office space? Do you
I
see?
think there's a certain tenant profile that it makes sense to look at acquiring space, but I don't see that market expanding to any great degree because, most tenants today, their business is far too volatile. The cycles affect their performance, and you want to get in and out of space. And once you make that commitment, you make that investment, it's like your house compared to leasing a house. You've made a commitment, and it's harder to shape your business strategy once you own that space.
But it's an interesting angle, though. Our firm was marketing 40 Rector, and they've done quite well selling the floors. If they weren't selling it, I don't think anyone is thinking about this building to lease it. So they found a type of tenant that wanted to invest. And you're right, it ties up money, and it's
But
and
what's
it's
interesting,
less
far below replacement cost.
Oh, of course.
Right? Because if the supply-demand curve were different, then you'd get much closer to replacement cost. But you're right, it was smart for what you did to create the demand, but still the pricing isn't where it could be.
I wish we had more time, but later on in the season we'll come back and discuss what's going on. I think we've got a pretty good idea of where the market is today, and I'd like to thank everyone. David Falk, Richard Bernstein, Paul Myers, and Franklin Spire. See you next week.